Hi YouTube, Darth here. I wanted to kick off a Hardline Yes or No with a review of an old friend of mine, the M416. This is probably my favorite weapon in Battlefield 4, but how does it fare in Battlefield Hardline? Should you use this weapon? Yes or no? Yes. Definitely a yes for the M416. It was pretty spectacular in the beta, and it retained a lot of the things that made it good despite the slight nerf it received. But before I glow all over this weapon, let's take a look at the things that make it exceptional. First, it has the highest rate of fire of the operator rifles. At 850 rounds per minute, the M416 kicks a ton of lead downrange. The next closest weapon with the same damage model is the M16A3 at 800 rounds per minute. There are faster automatics in the game, but this is the fastest of the assault rifles and carbine rifles. Next, the damage output of the M416 is the best among the operator rifles, giving it the lowest time to kill among its competing choices. When compared to the other assault rifles and carbines, the M416 has an exceptionally low minimum time to kill of roughly 252 milliseconds. However, multiple engineer PDWs and several enforcer battle rifles kill faster than this weapon. The M416 has good reload times, even if they aren't the best in the operator class. At 2.1 seconds for the bullet in the chamber short reload time and 2.6 seconds for the empty reload time, this weapon reloads slightly faster than the average assault rifle or carbine rifle. You can expend your entire supply of ammo, duck behind cover, and be ready to shoot again in very little time. Another notch in the plus column for the M416 is its bullet velocity. With bullets that travel at 600 meters per second, it's one of the faster velocities in the game. But as far as the operator rifles go, it's only slightly better than average, and when compared to other classes like the Enforcer Battle Rifle, it's on the slower end, but well suited for the mid-range that this gun excels at. Finally, the M416 doesn't start to drop off its 4-shot kill until 40 meters. The damage finally falls off to a 6-shot kill at 60 meters. This means that the weapon retains all its killing potential out to the ranges where battle rifles start to take over. By comparison, all Battlefield 3 and 4 rifles start dropping off at 8 meters. So this weapon can really reach out and touch someone, to death, with bullets. So these positives make the weapon great at a lot of roles in the close to medium range battle. It's not the greatest at everything, but it's certainly good at a lot of things and definitely stands out in the operator class. The weapon is not without its negatives though. One of the things you're going to notice the first time you fire the M416 is that it has some serious upward kick. The M416 has an upwards recoil of 0.525 degrees per round. In fact, among the operator rifles, only the AKM kicks harder, and that weapon is designed to be a headshot machine. Upwards recoil is perhaps more easily countered on a keyboard and mouse than a controller, so depending on your platform, you'll want to keep that in mind. The rest of the M416 stats are pretty average for the operator rifles. So the M416 is built to dominate that mid-range combat between where the PDWs drop off at about 10 to 15 meters, and where the battle rifles pick up the damage advantage at a range of 40 meters. At these middling ranges, as long as you can control the M416, you're going to dominate your opponents. So let's talk about controlling the M416. First, the recoil pattern of the M416 is 0.525 up, 0.05 left, and 0.2 right. The pattern the M416 is going to leave behind when fired uncontrolled is going to take this weapon up and to the right. Controlling this weapon means pulling down and to the left while you're firing. This will keep that recoil under control and to a confined area. But the more range you put between you and the target, the more that bullet spread will take over. That's when you're going to want to burst the weapon. Because the M416 has a bullet spread of only 0.098, you'll be able to fire this weapon in some relatively long bursts of 5 to 6 rounds before having to stop to prevent the spread from incurring you too many penalties to your automatic fire. Because the weapon fires relatively quickly at 850 rounds per minute, you'll have to practice up on hitting that sweet spot, as it's otherwise very easy to just lay on the trigger. The M416 is a pretty versatile weapon, and it'll let you do a lot of things that other weapons might not. It's got something to provide at every range, but you can contribute too. 2 skills that will help you out are 1. Knowing when to stop and shoot, and 2. When to hip fire this weapon. The first is a little harder to master, but when you're in the clear and you're not being shot at, stop and take your shot. Moving from side to side when you're not under threat is going to cost you quite a bit of accuracy, particularly with the M416 at range. It's okay to side strafe if you're facing down an enemy. It might actually prevent you from being killed. Ideally, you'd be near cover in either case. Second, knowing when to hip fire versus when to aim down sights is going to be a major bonus when you're using the M416, especially when you're up against CQB monster weapons. Those few hundredths of a second shaved off when in close quarters will save you time and again. Be sure that if you're engaging targets at less than 10 meters that you've got your hipfire mode mentally turned on. Some more specific advice for this versatile weapon would be that it tends to perform best on maps that have a mix of both close quarters and longer range combat. Ideally, this means conquest maps, but there are some close quarters conquest maps like Hollywood Heights where the M416 doesn't really compete well against close quarters options. On those maps, you may do better to have weapons that are really built for those ranges. Remember that the M416 is a master of mid-range, and it's also serviceable at every range, but it's not the king of everything. Finally, keep the recoil pattern of the M416 in mind when you're shooting enemies. Because its recoil pattern generally carries it up and to the right pretty swiftly, you're going to want to aim for the chest. The upwards recoil will naturally carry this weapon into your target's head on the third or fourth bullet, even when you're practicing moderate recoil control. We're a little bit early in the Battlefield Hardline release, but there have already been a large number of players out there using this weapon. Doing my usual due diligence on what other players are using with this weapon, BFHstats.com tells me that the top players preferred red dot sights, extended magazine, the heavy barrel, and the stubby grip. But what did I end up using? For the scope, I actually ended up going with the 1X Hollow Scope. This is a pretty typical scope for many first-person shooters, and it's been around in the Battlefield series for quite a few titles now. I gravitated to this scope because I like the feel of it, and the 1X seems to promote the play at ranges for which I think the M416 is best suited. Its housing might be a bit distracting, and it is possible to get by with a red dot sight. Now, I also used the Cobra pretty extensively, but I feel like I was missing out on some of that longer range potential the M416 possesses with my particular loadout. Next up, the accessory I chose was the laser sight. Not much of a surprise here, I think I've mentioned the laser sight on every loadout for my last half dozen weapon reviews. At first I was using the extended magazine, but I found the accuracy penalty when on the move to be less than worth it. The reload time for the M416 isn't defensive at all, and with a little care you can easily cover the 2.1 second reload time. The bonus to hipfire from the laser really gave the M416 a little needed bonus in the close quarters battles where the other players were bringing serious firepower. For the muzzle slot, I went with the heavy barrel. It seems like a bit of a no-brainer to combine a wonderful medium-range assault rifle with an attachment that makes aimed accuracy better. There weren't a lot of times where the suppressor felt like it was worth the loss of velocity, and the recoil of the M416, while high, is manageable. So no need for muzzle brake or compensator, at least on the PC. Finally, for the grip I decided to use the angled grip. I think this comes down to fighting style though. If you're prone to bursting more often like I do, the angled grip will be more your style. If you prefer longer bursts, you'll want the stubby grip. The accuracy bonus of offsetting that 2.2 times first shot recoil multiplier on what is a pretty beefy recoil appeals to me. However, if you want to use the extended magazine accessory, then I would definitely go with the stubby grip and heavy barrel. That stubby grip helps to offset some of the penalties incurred when using extended magazine. So the M416 is good, really good, at a lot of things. But there are a lot of other weapons that are better at the things that they do in the places that they were designed to do better. That being said, having an all-in-one rifle that is one of the best, if not the best, all-around choice is certainly a good option for most circumstances. Just know that you're going to be underperforming in places that it wasn't meant to dominate. The M416 is a definite yes, and if you haven't already checked out this weapon, then you should definitely give it a try. If you're not a fan of the M416, or you're playing on the law enforcement side of things and haven't yet unlocked the weapon license, you can try out the M16A3. It's very similar in rate of fire and recoil, and even has some advantages in bullet velocity and maximum range. If the M416 doesn't do the job for you in close quarters, you'll definitely want to consider classes that are more suited to close quarters combat with the Engineer or Enforcer. The Engineer MPX and K10 PDWs are excellent choices in close quarters situations, and the Enforcer shotguns are also pretty powerful at this range. That's it for this episode of Yes or No. If you found this video helpful or insightful, please leave it a like. If there's something you think I missed, or if you have a different take on the M416, please leave a comment below. Be sure to leave a comment if you have a weapon you'd like to see in a future episode of Yes or No. If you're new around here, check out my channel and please consider subscribing. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time, YouTube.